It's beat the Saints or the Chargers win means absolutely nothing. That's the mentality around Quest Diagnostics Training Center. So what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Big Blue, I'm Brandon London, and thanks for hanging for your Week 5 Blue Rush preview show. Paulson Adebo is returning to New Orleans. I went into the locker room for some real conversation with Abdul Carter and Jalin Hyatt. Plus, earlier in the week, Giants beat writer for the Post, Paul Schwartz, broke down all the need-to-know storylines. Let's get straight into this episode of Blue Rush. All right, Paul, who would ever think that the Giants would be stepping into what people could call a trap game? The Giants walking into a trap game down in New Orleans. I guess, how you feeling about this one, man?
You know, Brandon, it's kind of strange because they started as, I think, a 1.5 point favorite, and now they're an underdog.
Yep.
And I don't know when the line was made, if Malik Nabers, maybe the severity of the injury was not known or something like that. So I don't really understand that. But look, that's we talk about a trap game. The Giants are going on the road after a terrific win for them against an undefeated team, right? The Chargers, and they're going to play a team that's 0-4, and the Giants are not favored. So if they have any thoughts about it being a trap game, they got to get those out of their head real quick because you're not favored on the road against a team that's 0-4. I don't think the Giants will be thinking that way. I really don't, just because they have a rookie quarterback. You know, he's not been there, done that. A lot of their players have not been there, done that. And I'll tell you one thing: shame on the defense and the defensive front and the guys on the defensive in the defensive backfield if they're like going into this thinking, you know what, we got this. We just beat the Chargers. We'll take care of the Saints because I don't think the Saints are terrible. I mean, I think they have a young quarterback, and but this, yeah, well, anybody who's played in New Orleans knows. I'm sure most of the guys who played in New Orleans know you usually don't win there. So, no trap game as far as my mind, and I don't think in their minds either.
Yeah, that's Caesars Superdome. That's one of the eighth wonders of the NFL world. I played there when I was with the Dolphins in a preseason game, and it was the fourth preseason game. I guess I can tell you how old I am because there were 4 preseason games back then. But it was loud, Paul, and it was a game where I needed to make the team with the Dolphins, and you couldn't hear Pat White at times, and I'm like, man, what is this, the Super Bowl or preseason game number 4? So that it's going to be a great test for Jaxson Dart, and I understand people are going to be like, oh, well, he's played in the SEC. Nothing should rattle this kid. He's probably played in this dome before as well, some big SEC football, but this is completely different. And when we talk about, remember last week when you were talking about it was great for them to start him during the Chargers and not have his first start being on the road in New Orleans against a desperate and hungry Saints team that might have needed a win. When we talk about NFL, how you get better from week 1 to week 2, this is Jaxson Dart's week 2. So I'm expecting an improvement, but should we expect the ups and downs of a rookie quarterback going in to a Saints team that needs it?
I guess, I'm not a financial expert, Brandon, but I think it's almost like when you invest and you invest for the long term. Now, I would imagine, Brandon, your investments have more risk because more long term versus mine, which may be a little more conservative because I'm looking a little more short term, right? I think I'm going to be working shorter than you in our respective careers, I assume. So, you know what I mean? So,
Yep.
so you can maybe afford a little more risk, right? And a little more, excuse me, a little more. Okay, I take a little hit, I'm going to get back up. I take a little hit, I'm going to get back up. And I think that's what it is. The Giants are in this for the long haul with Jaxson Dart now. So, I don't think progress will be linear. I just don't think it is with most rookies. And once you think you've got it, then you don't. There is now film on him, right? There is now NFL film on him from a full game, not just 6 snaps, which he had in the first 3 games. So the Saints are going to go to work on that. They're going to see that they're using a lot of RPOs. They're going to see that he's running the ball a lot. They're going to see that he's not taking a lot of deep shots. They're going to see that he holds the ball too long when his first progression and first read is not there, and you can get him with the secondary sacks and coverage sacks. They're going to see all that, and guess what? There's no guarantee that the Giants are going to be leading in this game as they were for 50 minutes last week against the Chargers, where the Giants, it wasn't a rocking chair game, but it was a game where they never had to come off their script if they didn't want to. And another thing, Jaxson Dart was handled the ball twice at the 3 yard line with Dexter Lawrence and Drew Phillips interceptions twice. So that is a guaranteed 6 points on field goals.
Yep.
They got 10 out of it. They should have gotten 14 out of
Absolutely.
it. So there's no guarantee that they're getting the turnovers again. None. So they're going to have to generate more offense. So I'm bullish on Jaxson Dart after one start, but that doesn't mean I'm ready to tell people cash in on him on fantasy football, activate him this week, because you never know. As long as, like I said, with the investment stuff, as long as there's an up, there's a little bit of a down. There's a little bit of an up, then maybe there's a plateau. Then there's a little bit more of an up, then there's a little down. It's going to happen with him. And if it doesn't, then more power to him. He's the exception.
And I look at this as a prove-it game for the wide receiver room, going up against a Saints defense that's not terrible at all. They're 18th in total defense, gave up 14 total touchdowns. But when we talk about passing defense, they're ranked 15th. Why? Because their Saints defense has gone through what the Giants defense has had to go through for a long time. You're going up with a quarterback that at the time wasn't one of the premier quarterbacks in the league, and the offense would kind of falter and shoot themselves. So you're trying to hold an opposing offense to about 14 to 17 points, like the former Giants teams had to go through. Now, if they had a stronger offense, then who knows? And they played with the lead, then who knows? Saints defense could be a lot better. So you can't sleep when you look at the Saints defense at all. But when I'm talking about wide receiver room, this is their time to prove it, because there's 3 guys that I'm gonna mention right now that well, for different reasons, they have an opportunity to prove that they can play football. Darius Slayton. We know that he's been the most sturdy and stable Giants wide receiver, or consistent Giants wide receiver over his, 6-year career here. He got paid over the offseason, but haven't done much in the beginning of the season. This is your chance to show that, hey, I am a true 1A, 1B, but now I can be a number 1 receiver for Jaxson Dart. You've got a couple game audition before I believe they bring someone in or they go trade for somebody. Who knows? Jalin Hyatt, a guy that's been wrote off in a lot of people's mind about, oh, why can't this guy get on the field? Why isn't he consistent? Can he run the route tree? Russell Wilson had to come in and kind of reinvent Jalin Hyatt because he was forgotten about last season and the season before that. Bo Collins, the question mark. Okay, you're the guy that made the team. You're the guy that caught the moon ball, the 80-yard pass in the preseason. Should have scored there. But you're the question mark. Can you step in and make a play? Because depending on how well Bo Collins plays, and I'm not thinking this guy's going to get you 20-something plus points on fantasy, but depending on how well Bo Collins plays this game and the next couple games depends a lot on how aggressive Joe Schoen is when it comes to bringing in a wide receiver to replace Malik Nabers. So we know Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be a comfort blanket for Jaxson Dart, or at least he should be. I expect him to get a little bit more targets this game than what he did against the Chargers. But Slayton, Hyatt, and Bo Collins are 3 names to keep an eye on this game, because their production or how well they play, I believe, determines how aggressive Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll is in terms of going after another receiver to come in and try and replace as much as Malik Nabers' production as possible.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's not. He's not replaceable. We know that. I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable with what you're saying, just because. What do we always say about players? Do your job, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? When if you're supposed to get open in the slot, get open. If you're supposed to block, block. So, am I really to believe that Darius Slayton now can be a number 1 receiver, which he's never been in his career? Has he been given the opportunity? A little bit. He had the opportunity in 2022, right?
Yep.
Kenny Golladay fell by the wayside. Sterling Shepard got hurt. Kadarius Toney, and Slayton was on paper number 1, and Daniel Jones threw more to Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins. this is not a knock against Darius Slayton, but he's being paid as like a 2-3 receiver. Can he all of a sudden be a number one? He can't be Malik Nabers. He just can't be. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think you're letting him off the hook a little bit. He has to step up. He got the ball in the end zone, right? Jumping, leaping catch. He kind of didn't see the defender. What did you think when that play was not made by Wan'Dale? I know in my head, and a lot of people thought Wan'Dale Malik Nabers makes that catch. So who makes that catch? And as far as Bo Collins is a rookie, undrafted. We'll see. Anything they get from him will be probably a surprise. Jalin Hyatt, I don't, Gunnar Olszewski. I mean, he showed some nice things in the spring. I think he could be a guy. I might have more confidence in him right now than Jalin Hyatt. You're a receiver. You've watched Jalin Hyatt for 3 years. It just does not add up to me, and I have no expectation that he's going to get 30 snaps and catch 5 balls for 50 yards. I have no expectation of that. Do you really have an expectation that Jalin Hyatt can wake up and be the Bolitnikov winner, the 3rd-round pick, a guy who can play in the league? Do you have an expectation for that?
Well, he's put it on tape before. A couple years ago, they weren't winning that Arizona Cardinals game in the second half unless Jalin Hyatt kind of came alive. So I look at him and like, this guy has put speed on tape, has made plays in this league, but I'm also managing my expectations when it comes to all these guys. I'm not starting any of these Giants receivers in fantasy if I played it, because you're going with the rookie quarterback who last week, he showed he can run the football. This week and weeks going forward, he has to show that he can consistently make intermediate throws, but also have the comfortability in his big arm. He's an athletic Jay Cutler to put that on tape as well. You also have to have an offensive coordinator and head coach who wants to let him loose. I feel like they played a more conservative game against a Chargers defense who we thought was a pretty solid defense. So it's all about managing the expectations when it comes to these receivers. And I'm not trying to dodge around your answer, but I believe that Jalin Hyatt is good for at least one big play a game. Depending on how many targets that is, it's on him. He's shown it. So now you got to consistently put it out there for the coaching staff, because I remember when I was down in Miami, Paul, and I was doing my thing, with special teams. They brought me down to play special teams. But week in, week out, I was making plays against our defense. So then they added me to the heavy packages, 1 receiver sets. All right, go in there and block. But then that came from just going in there and blocking to putting an alert to where I can run a quick now route or a slant if they're stacking 8 in the box. I started catching those. Maybe didn't get any yak like some of these other guys, but I'm catching them. They're first downs. And then they started adding a little bit more deeper routes to my my repertoire, to my to what they wanted me to do. Now, we never connected. We never even threw them. But as you continue to show this coaching staff that you can be trusted, they are going to add more to your plate. So we are going to find out a lot about where Jalin Hyatt stands within this offense and within this coaching staff in this next 1 to 2 games by his rep count and his target count. So it's all on him to prove it and show that you are that 3rd-round pick that they brought you in to be, because this might be it in terms of opportunity. Because if not, they're either going to give more to Bo Collins or they're going to bring somebody in.
Now, I have a question about bringing somebody in, okay? And you're the perfect guy to ask this, okay? Because a lot of people said, Joe Shane's got to get somebody. They got to go get somebody,
Yep.
Now, there's nobody on the street that they can get. There's nobody on the street that's just sitting there saying, okay, I'm ready to play for you. They're really, it's Odell Beckham. We talked about that the other day. That's, I don't think is going to happen. There's a reason probably why he's unemployed. But I want to ask you, because, I inquired about this and say, what about someone's practice squad? Why don't you just, look at every 31 teams practice squads. And if you can find a receiver, you say, you know what, he can come in and be our 3rd or 4th receiver. Let's bring him in. All right. So let me ask you, you were on NFL practice squads, right? So if in week 5, you were told you're on the Giants practice squad, right? After week 5, you get a call from your agent and you say, the Browns just signed you to their roster. Okay. On Tuesday, they signed you to their roster. You get to Cleveland. Okay, how quickly would you be? You just knew the whole Giants offense. You've been there, right? You've been there for the first all of training camp and the first 4 games. How quickly can you show up in Cleveland and learn their offense and get on the field to play at a credible level? Let me ask you that.
If I'm a vet receiver like Gabe Davis, who's familiar with that offense. You know, you said the Browns. Like if I'm familiar with Stefanski's offense, and I've been around the receiver coach or maybe one of the offensive coaches on that staff, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and it'd be a package thing to where I wouldn't study the entire playbook. I'd study the install, what they're putting in for that week. And maybe I come from, let's say you come from the Titans and you're now with the Browns. Like, remember what Jason Garrett used to say all the time? A Hank is a Hank is a Hank. Curl flat, curl flat. It's all about, all right, if they call it a Hank with the Titans, maybe they call it a Shirley with the Browns. So now you're just trying to pick up on the terminology, but you have familiarity with the offense. On the flip side of that,
if you didn't? Well, yeah. What happens if you didn't? What happens
if you didn't? It's at least 4 weeks, Paul, for you to be comfortable out there because you need some sort of training. You need a training camp with these guys. You need 4 weeks to get in there, and like Coach Coughlin used to say, Coach. What Coach Coughlin used to say, know and know you know. It's not about the X's and the O's. It's about the Y's. Why are you breaking this route off here? Why are you against cover 2 in the seam route, middle of the field open? Are you taking the middle and middle of the field closed with the safety in the middle of the field? You stay up the numbers. It's about knowing that and being so comfortable and being on the right page with your quarterback and the rest of the offense. You got to be so comfortable out there. I feel as though that's going to take these guys, a new guy, about 3 to 4 weeks before he's comfortable, before the quarterback's comfortable, and the coaches are comfortable with really putting you out there and putting you out there. And before I give it back to you, Paul, remember my second year with the Giants, that preseason, I had 9 catches that preseason. The Dolphins came and grabbed me. They claimed me off waivers when the Giants wanted to put me back on the practice squad. I was there for a week. They dressed me that first week against the Jets. The Jets came down to Miami. They dressed me. We dressed 4 receivers. One of the receivers went down. I believe Ted Ginn went down for a little bit that game. And now me just being a special teams guy, I was getting reps on offense. And when I tell you my head was spinning, I just learned this 3 days ago, and now I'm sitting here trying to look at, and this was when the Jets defense was doing so many different things. I'm looking at guys moving. Is this too high, one high? I was able to still kind of play fast because they kind of hid me. But then the following 2 weeks, I was inactive. The next 2 weeks, that's when they did the Wildcat against the Patriots and beat the mess out of them. And then for the next 2 weeks, I was inactive. And then I showed that I picked up the playbook, and then they put me right back in there. So it's a situation to where if you don't feel comfortable as an athlete knowing the cerebral part of the football game, you can't put that 4-4 on tape because when you're thinking, you're 1 to 2 steps slow. And when you're thinking, that's when mistakes happen. And you can't have that with the rookie quarterback.
And don't forget what's happening this week. Giants play in New Orleans Sunday and play the Eagles Thursday.
Yeah.
So that's 2 games in 4 or 5 days. So you bring someone in, they're not going to be able to get it in for these next 2 games. They're looking. What I was told is, guys on practice squads are kind of the same. You know what I mean? Like the Giants have 3 receivers on their practice squads, and they're looking around the league at other practice squad receivers, and it's like our Brandon London is their Brandon London. Our little Jordan Humphrey is their little Jordan Humphrey. You know what I'm saying? I mean, It's just
Yeah.
I mean, they're on a practice squad for a reason. And the reason is not that they're bad players. It's just they're not, ready yet, or there's not a roster spot yet. But why take a guy from another practice squad and sign him to your roster if he's kind of the same guy that you already have in your building? So, look, we've spent a long time basically saying there's no Malik Nabers, and they're going to have to find it somewhere else, somewhere. They're going to have to replicate something, knowing they can't replicate the player.
The only practice squad name out there that I would consider bringing in or bringing back in is Isaiah Hodgins, because when they signed him a couple years ago, remember, he ended up leading the receivers with touchdowns. That was a down year in terms of how many touchdowns were thrown. I believe, 15? But that was the year Daniel Jones got paid and Isaiah Hodgins came in. And that back end of the season, he was anything and everything. Big possession guy, sure target. So that would be the only name that I would bring in, and plus there's familiarity there. So I 100 wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. Plus, if I'm Lil Jordan Humphrey or one of these guys and you go to another practice squad and bring a guy in, you're going to be feeling the way that I felt when they signed Dominic Hickson in from the Denver Broncos instead of elevating me. I knew I wasn't a punt return guy, and it ended up being a great decision on their point. But you feel some sort of way like, wait, I thought I was next up. But, it is what it is. Like we said, no one's going to be able to replicate Malik Nabers' production. It's going to have to be receiver by committee. But if you're Jalin Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, doesn't matter who you are, when that ball comes and it is a catchable ball and it's a must-have-it moment, this is when you got to show up and show out. This is when y'all get to be stars now. Take advantage of it. Paul, I'm going to go into the locker room, talk to a couple guys, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the defense because everyone's saying we're not talking about the defense enough. So we're going to give their flowers. But first, I go into the locker room, hang out with a couple of guys, and see where their mindset is going down to the boot in this week's London in the locker room. All right, London in the locker room, hanging out with wide receiver Jalin Hyatt. You had the scrum, the media over here talking about the opportunity now that's presented in front of you because of Malik Nabers out for the season. What's going through your mind right now? Is it business as usual, or is there you changing something up within your routine to get ready for Sunday against the Saints?
Just keeping the same routine. Keeping the same routine even when Malik was here. Working hard in practice. Taking advantage of opportunities, being ready when my number's called, and obviously what happened in the league is heartbreaking. I called him, right after we got done playing the game, and checked up on him, make sure he was all right. But this is just an opportunity. Next man up. That's how the NFL is, and I'm gonna be ready. So I just can't wait for it.
What was that conversation like in the receiver room today? As you guys go through install, you get ready for the first practice, official practice, going into New Orleans. What the conversations you guys have had about next man stepping up and take advantage of every opportunity and target that comes you guys' way.
Yeah, it kind of felt different. Elite wasn't in there, But other than that, though, man, we're gonna keep the same routine that we always keep. And we have a good game plan set, for the Saints. They have a good secondary. And, man, I just can't wait to go out there and play with the guys, play with Jax, play with Slade, play with Wan'Dale, and just to have fun, man, take advantage of opportunities. And it's going to be a good game, but we got to get this win for Sunday.
Do you go back and watch some of the tape from your rookie year, specifically that Cardinals game, second half of the Cardinals game? You had offensive explosion. It was kind of like your coming out party to the Giants Nation. Do you go back and look at old stuff where you're just like, you know what, that's the past? This is Jalin Hyatt of 2025.
Yeah, man, I'm leaving everything in the past, the last 2 years. This is a new me. Obviously I've been through some adversity, but, that's what builds you. That's what builds you. That's what builds character. That's what builds, a new man. And like I said, man, I just can't wait to, go out there, play with the guys, play with my brothers, take advantage of opportunities, like I said, and have fun at the same time. I feel different. I'm ready to go. And, like I said, man, you never know when your opportunity comes. It can come late, it can come early. And, I hate had to be it like that. But, like I said, I'm going to take advantage of it, and do what I got to do, for my teammates, and not only that, for Leap. So just can't wait to go out there and do it.
Jaxson Dart now gets to start again for the second straight week. Do you see anything different in his preparation, his just overall aura from week 1 to week 2 now that he got some game reps under his belt?
Yeah, I mean, he's a confident quarterback, and usually don't get that from young quarterbacks like himself. And I'm actually proud of him. Taking a start. We were 0-3, and we played the Chargers, who was a good team at that point, 3-0, and he kind of took over the offense, and you can just tell by his confidence. He was out there, and we won the game. So, but for us, we got to play at a higher standard. For him being a rookie, the receiver room, we got to play at a higher standard, and not only that, with Lee. week going, we got to play at a higher standard. So, like I said, man, I just can't wait to go out there and take advantage of opportunities. Can't wait to go out there and play with my teammates and get this dub.
All right, let's have a little fun. It's London in the locker room. I got my shoulders loose. I like to have fun with you guys. I've been telling you guys, take us in the locker and show us one thing you got to have. It's a must-have in the locker. Make sure ain't nothing crazy in there real quick. Look, why don't you go grab it and come on back.
Let me see it.
Guys, with these dirty lockers, I can only imagine what the apartments look like.
We'll go with Zans, man.
The what? No. No. Take two. You trying to get me fired out here. Wow. Must have, use every day.
Let's go with multiple gloves.
Okay, the gloves. Your glove swag. Oh, still an Adidas guy.
Oh yeah, still Adidas. Still Adidas. Always Adidas.
All right. So why these gloves? Show us.
We're gonna go with the red ones. These are my game ones. I usually wear my game ones in practice just to get used to them, to feel them. I can't do the new gloves like during the game. I can't do it.
Really?
Can't do it. They gotta be worn down.
Okay.
And so I'll probably go to red gloves, man. Gotta have these.
All right. Hopefully you get a touchdown in these on Sunday, man. Good luck.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, London in the locker room here with Abdul Carter. You switched out the sweatshirts. You had the Oregon gear on. Phil Knight send you something, or was that a lost bet with you and Kayvon?
That was me and KT. I'm gonna honor my bet, so I had to throw in the Oregon gear.
All right, but shout out to Penn State though, as always.
Absolutely, yes sir.
All right, man, you're coming off of one of your better games early in your rookie season. Is it starting to slow down for you out there?
I wouldn't say it's starting to slow down. I get better week in, week out. And that's all we try to focus on, especially as a unit, just all about getting better week in, week out.
But for you, what would you say, one, is something you're doing very well, two, something you think that, all right, AC, I need to get better at this going into a week against the Saints?
I don't want to say nothing specific. I would just say just in general, like, I don't really focus on myself a lot. I just want to make sure I'm going out there doing my job, playing the hardest I can play. And once I do that, I feel like everything else take care of itself.
20 quarterbacks pressures between the big three of you, Kayvon, Brian Burns, 12 hits as well. I mean, how you guys coming together as that unit? Are you guys starting to feed off of each other? What's the communication like when you're all out there on the field at the same time?
Yeah, we got a standard. We expect dominance every time we go out there. And, once we stop the run, earn the right to rush the passer, make the quarterback one-dimensional, that's when we could take over the game.
You and Jaxson Dart were both drafted in the first round. You're next to each other during warm-ups, hamstring stretches and all that. How cool is it to see him run around out there for the first time, and especially getting the end zone on that opening drive?
Yeah, it was dope. We've been talking like all through the week before his first start. Just him being ready, staying ready. We talked about it all the time. Just make sure you're ready when your opportunity comes, and he took advantage of it.
Defensively, you guys were playing with a lead for 57 minutes in that game. I mean, how does that make you guys in terms of being aggressive and kind of closing out a game? You guys closed that thing out. When you watch the tape, like how great did it feel as a defense of what y'all put on tape?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it that people don't understand. Like, once you play from a lead, the other team has to throw the ball more, so that lets our pass rush get more active. And I feel like that's what happened. Offense put us in a nice situation, and we took advantage of it.
Last but not least, I like to put guys on the spot. Show us something in your locker that you absolutely love. It's a must-have. You need it every day.
We're going to do that another time. I'm a little messy right now.
You're a little messy right now. See what happens.
Another time, we'll get that out there.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Good luck on Sunday.
Appreciate you.
Great things on tape against the Chargers, especially when it came to creating pressures. I believe they had their best statistical game in terms of the pressures created. 20 total between the big three of Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau. Spencer Rattler hasn't won a game in the NFL yet, and he cannot come out of Sunday, Paul, at 4:25 p.m., whatever time it is. He cannot come out of that game with his first NFL win. They got to rattle Rattler.
Rattle Rattler, yeah. Look, he's going to run around. He hasn't been awful. He's completing, I think, 67% of his passes. I think he has 5 touchdown passes and only 1 interception. So he's not doing a lot of crazy things to make them lose. But I think it's 5.2 yards average per reception. They're not throwing the ball deep. They're not getting the ball deep. They're getting the ball out of his hands. He's a feisty guy. He's a very experienced college quarterback. But yeah, I mean, this is, if this is not a once a month club with the Giants defense here. You know what I mean? They showed a lot of good stuff. I'm sure the Saints offensive coaches are now figuring out a way, maybe, keep a tight end in, get a fullback in there to chip one of these guys. Brian Burns has Kelvin Banks is a rookie left tackle, right, for the Saints. Number 9 pick in the draft, this past draft from Texas. Good prospect, but he's a rookie. It was interesting in the locker room after the game. Kayvon Thibodeau has had so few opportunities to sit back after a game and win and kind of have fun with us and talk. And, Kayvon's got a personality, and he was saying, you just wait and watch. And, the best is yet to come. Abdul Carter had a big game. He didn't have a big game from sack-wise, but he had 5 pressures. They put him on the edge more, which I think is good. He's a rookie, so let him do what he's most comfortable with, even though he did play inside in Penn State, but they draft him to be kind of a perimeter guy. Let him rush from the outside. He just looks really good. I mean, he's going to be a really good player. He already is a really good player. Dexter Lawrence had his best game. So, more of the same. We remember with the OC Tuck, Strahan, JPP, those guys that, it pretty much was every week. Every week they were a force to be reckoned with, and some weeks more so, some weeks less. But you have to make it so that the Saints know we got to get the ball out of our hand quick. We can't screw around back there. And then, then you got to tackle, then you got to tackle. But yes, I agree with you that it's fascinating to watch. Can this Giants defensive front do it again? They did it once. They've shown some good things in the first 3 games, but this was the best one yet. Can they do it again, against a young quarterback who has not had much success so far?
I love how the Giants defense, that's showing that their NASCAR package is there. Watching that tape, you're seeing guys twist, you're seeing stunts, you're seeing guys lining up in the A and B gap, looping. I think Shane Bowen has really finally settled in and knowing how to call a game when it comes to having a bunch of pass rushers. It's just like having a bunch of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. How do I get the right guy, the right ball, or target him at the right time? You're seeing the same thing of him drawing certain things up when it comes to a Brian Burns or a Kayvon Thibodeau of Abdul Carter. But honestly, it's this game, I feel like it's the secondary's time to dominate a game. I think it's time we see a return on investment for Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo. Adebo going back to New Orleans. What was that, 98, 99 mil that they paid on those 2 guys? Paulson Adebo has had his hands on the ball a couple of times. He's got a lot of pass breakups. I believe like over 5, I believe. But he hasn't had that interception yet. Javon Holland has been around the football, has had some pretty solid tackles, but he hasn't had that turnover yet. No one outside of Drew Phillips in that secondary has really stood out to me just yet. And I believe that this could be the game for Javon Holland or Paulson Adebo to really break out and to where we look at it and be like, okay, that's another check for Joe Shane on his offseason and bringing in talent or bringing in the groceries to make this defense a lot better than what it was in years past.
And that's a fast track. That's a fast track inside there, right? That. Chris Olave is a good player.
Yep.
Brandon Cooks is a veteran player. Maybe he's lost a step, but he knows what he's doing. Rashid Shaheed has really good speed,
yes,
right? So, and their tight end is leading them in Juwan Johnson leads them in receiving yards, which is not a great sign for an offense when your tight end is leading you in receiving yards, unless you're Kelsey or Gronkowski in your prime. You know what I mean? Which this guy is not.
Or Darren Waller, as he was against the Jets the other day. But keep going.
He didn't have a lot of yards, but he had 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
He had 2 touchdowns. Yeah. He looked tall, didn't he?
Yeah, he
when he came
fast,
to the Giants,
and nimble.
He looked. Well, he looked tall. I mean, he went to the back of the end zone, and Sauce Gardner did not make a play on him. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, but you knew it was going to happen. As soon as I saw he was playing in the game, I said, Waller's definitely having a touchdown, maybe two, and he did. It's what happens when you let Giants when the Giants let guys go, they seem to flourish other places. Even though I don't question him for Darren Waller retired on him. He just said, I don't want to play anymore. Um, but yeah, I agree. I would say not disappointed in Adebo and Holland so far, but I haven't been overwhelmed with them either. I think Tyler Nubin has been more active, but sometimes he takes angles on the ball in pursuit, which is questionable. Yeah, I mean, Cordell Flott, I think, has played fairly solidly. I think Deontay Banks has played a little bit of a high wire act, good plays and then some bad plays. So, I think Flott is more consistent there. Look, nobody's proven anything yet, and the Giants got, Drew Phillips got a diving interception completely as a result of pressure up front that forced Herbert to throw the ball before he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be more of that this week. I think the ingredients are there for a pretty good defense, but I'm not sold on it yet. You can't be sold on anything after 1 3-point win. That's all there is to it. The Giants know what is in front of them. They have a game against a winless team, and then they play the Eagles on a short week. Then they go to Denver, which is a tough trip in altitude against a pretty good team, and then they come back and play the Eagles. So, after the Saints, Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. You tell me where the wins are coming there. So maybe if they beat the Saints, they get a little momentum. We'll see. So this was a fun week. They won a game, and Jaxson Dart played well enough. But there's so much more work to be done, and until proven otherwise, I'm going to be skeptical. I'm going to be skeptical of what they're capable of doing. I've been to that building a lot in New Orleans, and the Giants rarely come out of there with a victory.
Yeah, one of our hot topics for today's, vodcast podcast was, can the Giants be trusted? And it's like, I don't know, Mike. You know a little bit more than me because my kid's only 2.5 years old. But when these kids are going for their driver's test and they're like, Dad, can I drive? Can I drive? It's like, I don't know. I'll trust you in the mall parking lot when there's no one there, but not on the road just yet. And it's because this run defense still hasn't shown up and shown out. Amarian Hampton, 12 carries, $128. That's 10.7 yards per carry versus the Chargers. And if someone was to tell me, well, Amarian Hampton, he's a really good back. Alvin Kamara is a really good back. And the Saints are going to lean on him. They've been leaning on him to try and get some sort of explosive plays in the offense, not just in the run game, but the pass game. So when you talk about Tyler Nubin, and you pointed it out about how, there's question marks in terms of some of the angles he's tried to take, and Amarian Hampton kind of hit that sideline. If I'm Kamara, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at, if I get one of these secondary guys in the open, whether it's a Holland or a Nubin, and I'm one-on-one in space, I'm going to do something or create some sort of move to make them stop their feet, because then my stop and start is a lot better or faster or explosive and try and hit that perimeter. So when we're talking about, can the Giants be trusted, I need a game or two or three for them to put together games where they stop the run, consistently stop the run, and force teams to throw on second and long or second and longers than what they have at this point. So I think that's the biggest question mark I have yet on this defense. Yes, I want the secondary to dominate. 2-3 interceptions, jump ball, one-on-one 50 balls to where the defensive line didn't have any impact on the throw. Would love to evaluate some of those, but also when it comes to this run game, because that's still a question mark going into week 5.
Yeah, look, sometimes, in the old days you could say, man, they held them under 100-yard rushing. That is tremendous. Some days it was wow, they held them to 65 rushing yards. They really shut that down. That's harder to do now because quarterbacks run so much, and it's not really, that is part of the run game, but I'm talking about the running backs. A quarterback on 3rd and 12 getting 8 yards and they punt, that's an 8-yard average, for that play, but it really didn't hurt the defense. Look, Alvin Kamara was a great player. He's not a great player anymore. He's averaging 3.9 yards per carry. Kendre Miller's averaging 4.4. But I think you're right. We need to see one of these games where after the game, the Saints coaching staff says, well, they took the running game away from us, so we had to throw the ball. They took the running game away from us. The Giants have not taken the running game away from any team in the first 4 games by a long shot. You know what I mean? Look, after the game, Jim Harbaugh was asked, why did you only give Hampton 12 carries? I mean, he's averaging 10 yards a carry. And he said, well, this, in hindsight, you can always look back and question things that you did. And I think they didn't, Harbaugh's a guy who wants to run the ball. He's a conservative, he's a play defense and run the ball old school coach. They should have run it more. They were never behind by so much that they had to throw it. I know when you have Herbert, you want to throw it, but still, I think when you throw the ball and you let the pass rushers, you're almost letting the Giants do what they do well. Yeah, I mean, this is the week to stop the run. There's no question about it. The gang tackle Kamara, don't give him big yards. Rattler will run a little bit, but he's not gonna kill you like Jaden Daniels or something like that. So yes, this is the week. Make a young quarterback one-dimensional, and conversely, I think the Saints have to be thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Cam Scatterbo and Motor Singletary. We got to put the clamps on those guys. Make Jaxson Dart did not show us he can beat us with his arm after his first start. We got to see if he can. We can make him do that.
All right, finish us off here, Paul. It's time to pass it to Paul. Saints 0-4. The Giants just beat a team that no one expected them to beat. Now they cannot go down to Louisiana and lose this game against a team that doesn't have a win, because it's almost like it voids that Chargers game. Finish this off, Paul.
Yeah, you know what? Even the best teams, it's sort of week to week. I mean, the best teams, we have a feeling they're going to do this well most of the time, right? But what were we hearing a couple of weeks ago after the Packers got Micah Parsons? Oh man, they added a great player to a really good defense. They may have the best defense in the league. And then we watched the other night, right, where the Cowboys are going up and down the field and up and down the field, and
Yep.
it's a 40-40 tie. And what happened to the Packers' great defense? We think the Packers are going to play good defense most weeks, but they just got torched for 40. So there's things we think we know about the Giants, good and bad, probably more on the negative side right now because they're 1-3. But I don't know how any of that translates to going into New Orleans and winning a game. Will the pass rush show up and be there? We think it should. We'll see if it does. Will Jaxson Dart not turn the ball over? Well, he's shown that he's very careful with the ball, but he's a rookie. So a tip pass, a batted ball, a bad read, that can happen. It's a pick six, or you give up the ball in a disadvantaged situation. So I don't know what we can hang our hat on with the Giants yet. I really don't. There's been, they were better with the penalties, but there's been games where they've been terrible with penalties and things like that. So there's that rear its ugly head with some holding penalties and things like that. I would say, having Andrew Thomas at left tackle is just such a safety blanket because he does not give up pressures. He played, every series, every snap last week. And so that is a great thing to have for Jaxson Dart moving, last week and moving forward. I even question, I almost don't even want to say it's a game the Giants should win. I'm not going to say that because I don't know what the Giants should win right now. It's certainly a game the Giants should be competitive in, and it will set them back if they don't win. I will say that. It will set them back if they don't win. And I don't know if I'm confident that they will. I'm just not sure at this point. I need to see more.
Paul, what are you going to do for dinner when you're down there? You going gumbo? You going crawfish, seafood boil? What are you going to do for dinner down there?
I'm not sure. I'm not a big seafood guy. New Orleans is not my favorite place to eat, but look, there's plenty of good things. Some po' boys are good. Some non-seafood gumbos I like.
Nice.
I'll find a place for Saturday night. I'm staying right downtown. It's I've been there, done that with the whole Bourbon Street experience. There are good restaurants down there, but I'm a honky tonk. I don't know about how much honky tonk I have left in me at this stage of my career. Okay. That's honky. Yes. I don't know about honky tonk right now. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll
Oh
see.
man! And on that note, absolutely love it, man. And bring back some hot sauce if you can as well. I'm a hot sauce guy for sure. All right, thank you guys for hanging out with us on our Week 5 Blue Rush pregame show. Make sure you check out the postgame show or the postgame live right after the game. Hopefully, we're breaking down another win. We love the engagement and viewership that we got last week. Everything's always better with a win. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brendan London. Thanks for watching Blue Rush.